Christian, man, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ken. I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, how's everything in Austin right now?
Everything's good. Yeah, I would say Texas relative at least to like California, where I was born and raised and where a lot of my family is.
Yeah.
Yeah, very different than California right now. I would say
Although it feels like half of California is actually moving to Austin as we speak. It's like a mass exodus right now. It's crazy.
Yep. Luckily, I moved out here about 5 years ago, so I can say that I'm. I don't know if I'm an Austinite yet, but I'm closer at least than some of these newbies out here.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, Austin, Texas, man, it's beautiful out here. Like I said, I've been out here for a little over 5 years. Moved out here right after I finished up my undergrad out in California, and yeah, I just closed on a home. Just bought a home 2 weeks ago with my girlfriend and business partner. So yeah, excited, man. I think Austin might be home for a while.
Dude, Austin's great. And I've only been there actually during like South by Southwest, back when we could actually like be in groups of people. But even just like getting on the fringes of Austin, man, you can see why people are fighting to keep it weird. Like it's just got such a cool culture. And such like, I don't know how to describe it, but like it really has its own personality. It's a cool city. I like Austin a lot, man. Well, cool. So like I was saying before we started, I'm so pumped to talk to you because I feel, as I understand the mission of your newest venture, it just seems to align so closely with what the mission of this show is. You know, and sometimes I talk about this beforehand, but really like my mindset is kind of like what makes a great athlete makes a great person, right? So whether it be like things that you do in training, nutrition, sleep, what have you, like a lot of those things are beneficial just to kind of optimizing your health. And so what I would love to hear from you is, you know, what is kind of like this concept of the durable athlete? Because as I understand it, you know, you work with people at the highest ends of sport, but it seems like what you're trying to do is bring a lot of these same concepts and make it approachable to kind of like the average person, whether they're an athlete or not. So, I mean, maybe I shouldn't explain what you're doing, but yeah, I kick it to you, man. Can we talk a little bit about what the durable athlete is?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I definitely feel like I have to start with just, you know, kind of like the why. Like, why was the durable athlete created? Kind of like, where is the origin story there? And I feel like I would almost have to kind of explain and give a background about like myself and also my girlfriend and co-owner and creator of the durable athlete, Natalie.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Natalie, I'll start with Natalie. Natalie grew up out in Dallas, Texas. She's always been very, very, you know, physically active. She played a year of college basketball at UT Dallas.
Nice.
And then after that year, I mean, born and raised in that same city, I think she just wanted to get out and kind of give sports and basketball a little bit of a break. So yeah, she ended up going to school out here near Austin in San Marcos at Texas. And yeah, so I believe right when she graduated college, which, her degree, man, I'm not going to speak to her degree because I don't know what her degree is in. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for that. But
okay. We'll edit it.
Yeah, but she started coaching CrossFit and coached CrossFit out there in San Marcos for about a couple of years. And then she got into teaching. She was teaching third grade out here in Austin, Texas for about 4 years there. And then I want to say the last year of her teaching is when her and I met. And, you know, she had always been, and we met at Onnit, right? The gym that I used to be a coach at, the gym I used to be a coach at as well. But at the time, she was just going in, working out, just, you know, leisurely. And so slowly over time, we like built a relationship, built a bond, and obviously got it to the point where we started to date formally. And within like the first year of us dating, you know, she had brought up, hey, like, you know, the clients you're working with, I've seen you work with them over like, you know, 6 or 7 months now. It's like not disrespectful, not trying to be disrespectful, but like some of them don't really look like they're progressing. And I mean,
wow.
Yeah, I know it's kind of like a pretty harsh statement coming from a girl.
I love it.
But
she's not pulling any punches.
No, 100%. She's being, you know, transparent. She's being, you know, speaking her truth. And obviously I respected that. It took it as a gut punch initially because it was like, whoa, that's my client. Like, you know, I kind of got to put a little barrier up there. But really kind of took a step back and realized, you know, what she was trying to say was, hey, if they're not doing, you know, the right things outside of the gym, who cares how much they come inside the gym, right? Who cares if they come in 7 days a week, each day for an hour? Like physical fitness is only really one aspect to health. So I'm going to kind of leave that there, then kind of get into like my background, right?
Yeah.
My background was grew up out in California. I've always loved playing basketball. Sports have always been a big part of my life, but basketball was like number one, right? I think at the age of like 10 is where I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I'm going to do solely.
Yeah.
And I sprained my ankle. I went into physical therapy when I was about 12 or 13 years old. And at that point, I remember sitting there first day on the table and just realizing that, like, okay, I don't know what is going on here. I don't know, what degrees or, what certifications you need to have to be able to do this as a profession. But the music, seeing like athletes, seeing like kind of like this like good energy, positive vibe energy inside this like studio was like, this is what I want to be around.
Huh.
And I know it's funny to think that at such a young age, but I always say, if you met my mom, then you would understand like why my head was thinking about like what I want to do when I get older. Right.
Okay. Why is that?
She's just very type A. Like, she just is like a hustler, man. She doesn't stop. She's been working in an executive position for a very long time out in California for several different like ag companies, because agriculture is like very, very big where I was born and raised. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, she's like a real estate agent. She's like certified to like sell life insurance. I mean, she does everything under the sun. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, she's just always kind of been like a very much, I mean, a mentor and a guiding light in my life, right? Whether we realize it or not, like, you spend so much time with, with somebody, like, for example, your parents, you kind of start to like pick up on their energy. You pick up on the way they talk, the way they think, like their style of how they get across every day.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I think that's probably where a lot of that came from in terms of me thinking like, what do I want to do when I get older? So my mom, being the person she is, I said that in the car. And so the next day she called the owner of that physical therapy clinic. And was like,
I love it.
My son is going to intern for you. And so it was in summertime. So I just started to intern. And of course, like, I'm not taking anybody through any exercises. I'm not checking anybody in. It's really just like cleaning the facility. It's just trying to be a fly on the wall. That's something that my parents like always tried to instill in me. It was just like shut up and listen. Like, usually if you listen more than you speak, like, you'll be able to learn a lot. Right. And obviously just always ask questions. And luckily, I mean, I did that in a physical therapy clinic all the way up until where I graduated high school.
No way. So you started doing this like 11 or 10?
Like 12. I was
12. Wow.
12 and 13. Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's very different. I don't think a lot of people had that opportunity. Of course.
No, dude. Trying to get most teenagers off the couch. Yeah. Let alone to like spend time learning a craft. It's one thing to have a job, but like the focus that you must have had. I mean, that's 6 years, right? Yeah. That's incredible.
80 years. But it's funny because like, you don't know what you don't know sometimes, right? Like, when you're just in it, you don't know that you're doing something that's like going to benefit you in the future. Obviously I want to say it back at that time, I had that mentality of like, hey, this is going to pay off in some way, in some capacity.
Yeah.
But it's kind of tough to speak to like how important those first like 6 or 7 years were, not in, me learning what the deltoid is or where the deltoid attaches or where the pec is, but kind of just like learning about like the human body. And when you get hurt in X, why is it that like X would get hurt? And like, what do we need to do to like baby step our way to get that like back in the right place to where it can function at like its appropriate baseline? Yeah. Now, of course, like, I would never be able to articulate that at a young age, but that is where the foundation, I believe, started for me in terms of like physical fitness and just my approach to just health, I guess, in general, and physical health. Yeah. So yeah,
that's incredible. Well, and it's, I really want to hear, the rest of the story, but like, it seems like already it's like you were kind of thrown into the fire, and like what your experience was beyond, like you said, just like, I don't know, quite literally, like, what are the muscles? Where are they? What are they named? And it's about like, how do they function? Movement, rehabilitation. That's incredible. Yeah. And I don't know. I hadn't always had the best experiences in rehab centers. So I'm glad that like where you were at was a place that you wanted to be. Yeah. I think that probably made a big difference as well.
100%, man. I think, obviously my mom knew the owner, so we were pretty close with him.
Okay, cool.
Like, there's that good vibe there. And obviously, him owning that physical therapy clinic, all of the PTs, I don't want to say work underneath him, but they worked alongside him. And so, of course, like if your boss is like, hey, this kid is going to be in here and he's probably going to be watching you, he's going to ask questions like just be nice and like respond to him.
Right.
I got lucky. Let's just be honest, right? Because I could have just been a random kid and, people in their 30s and 40s, that are doctors could have been in there like, well, what is this? Why is this kid here? Just let me work, let me do my profession, let me do my craft. So yeah, that's where that started. Then once I went to college, again, in my head, I'm like, cool, physical therapy. My freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, I interned at just different physical therapy clinics out in Southern California. So I grew up more like central, and then I went to school out in like Southern California.
Didn't you go to CLU?
Yeah.
So I actually know CLU. I used to go to quarterback camp there when I was in high school. They had like the quarterback and receivers camp. It was like a big,
crazy.
Yeah.
Cal Lutheran is like a beautiful campus.
Yeah.
Thousand Oaks is a beautiful, expensive city.
Oh man.
Yes. But it's funny. If you know about Cal Lutheran, I did my first 2 years at Cal State Channel Islands, which was like right out of high school. So, I graduated 2010. I want to say that school, Cal State Channel Islands in Camarillo, started like in 2008. I think that's like maybe 2007 or something like that. So it was like brand new. And
interesting.
Yeah, man. It was amazing because it was a brand new school. There was no sports there. So it felt like all the teachers that were there, like, really wanted to be there. And I don't know if maybe just because of budgets, maybe teachers were able to get allocated more money because there's not as much, there's no sports there. But it just like, I love the vibe from like every single one of my teachers. Obviously Camarillo, you're like 5 minutes away from Malibu. Like you're not.
Yeah, it's not a bad place to be on the planet.
Beautiful. Yeah, of course. It's gorgeous. But yeah, I went there. Then I transferred to Cal Lu because they didn't end up having exercise science. Which again, was like physical therapy. I don't want to be a bio major. I damn near don't want to be a chemistry major.
Right.
So Cal Lu was like the closest school that I could transfer to that still had my major.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So did that. And I think I really want to speak to this. My senior year, I started interning with the physical therapist. Very, very different approach than anybody I've ever worked with. He, to put it in layman's terms, like took a very holistic approach to treating people. Not only in the sense of, hey, there's a left shoulder issue, but it's coming from the right pubic bone, or it's coming from the right talus and the right foot, or whatever the heck it may be. Like that thought process was very foreign to me, right? It was very much just like X and O. It was very much like, if this was hurting, then something around here needs to be like fixed or moved or strengthened. Because that was kind of, again, my like elementary, I guess, understanding of like the human body, right? And so, yeah, that was like the first like aha moment. That was the first moment where it was like, oh, stress. Like, what is stress? And I thought stress was just like when you're, getting all crazy with your thoughts up in your head. I didn't know that stress could be like a cold shower. I didn't know stress could be the processed foods that we eat, staying up late at night, drinking, like all these different things. And that was like, again, like a big light bulb went up, but it still wasn't really connecting the dots so much. To me personally, at that time, I was doing some personal training. I was helping out in the strength and conditioning weight room at Cal Lutheran a little bit. So again, I think my head was still more in like the training aspect, but I also knew like I had this background and a slight understanding of like physical therapy. And then when it came down to applications, I didn't get into any I didn't get into any doctorate schools for physical therapy.
Oh, interesting.
I got into East Tennessee State and UT Austin out here for the Longhorns for exercise physiology. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, that kind of sucks. Like I thought my whole life I wanted to become a physical therapist, and it's very competitive. I didn't get in. And I was like, you know what though? That physical therapist kind of put things in perspective that like, I don't have to be a PT in order to like help people to move better. Right.
Yeah.
Of course I can't be a rehab specialist, or I can't say that I'm here to rehab you or fix your issues. But, I think I could take a human, who might be in maybe might be experiencing some like setbacks or some pain, and I could potentially help them right through like different mechanisms.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so long story short, from there, took off to Austin, and then I got a job at Onnit, the Onnit headquartered gym out here, and then obviously was going to grad school at the same time. After a couple months, dropped out of grad school, first semester, dropped out because at that time I was already getting to work with like high level athletes, and my like training schedule and clients was like full. Now, well, if I'm kind of coming to school to want to work with athletes, to want to work with sport teams, to get a better understanding of like the human body and how it responds to different stressors, like I could just learn that, right? Like I pick up a book, like these articles. I remember just like reading the articles, and obviously I'm not downplaying anybody who goes and it goes to grad school or gets their PhD or their doctorate, whatever it may be, because big kudos to them. Like I did not have the discipline, at least to stay in school, at least in my situation. But yeah, I just took it upon myself. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be reliant upon like being in a formal education setting to like further my education every day. Like that had to be a piece of me regardless, you know, because once I got out of school, what does that mean? Do I just stop reading? Do I just stop caring about like how, you know, our understanding of the human body continues to evolve? So dropped out. Then soon after that, but a couple of years later, met Natalie. We're now at that point where she's like, yo, it's more than just fitness. And that is kind of where we created the Durable Athlete. And it was, of course, in the beginning, it was like, well, like, how do we got to have like principles, or we got to have like a base. We got to have like pillars. We have to have like all the things that we speak to have to be able to maybe like compartmentalize and fall under like a category of things. And that's kind of where like the pillars of the Durable Athlete are today, which is movement, breath, sleep, and nutrition. And,
I love it.
And granted, you could probably come up with, you know, what about hydration? What about all these other things? You know, of course.
Sure. Yeah.
Those are important for sure. Right. But those
stop poking holes in my pillars, man. I'm just trying to help you out.
Just stand, man. But yeah, that's kind of like, you know, really the big why of why we even created the Durable Athlete was helping people like further their health, not just with fitness, but with an understanding of like how the holistic approach of a human being, like what does it mean to be a human being? What does it mean to thrive as a human being? I don't think those were ever taught to us like in school. I don't think, you know, unless your parents were in the industry and like really had a good understanding of the human body, like parents aren't talking about that. Coaches aren't talking about that. So it's like, where's that drop off? No offense, but like doctors, a lot of doctors aren't talking about that as well. So like, who is going to be there to speak to it? Right. And that's kind of like, I guess the origin of like the Durable Athlete.
Oh, dude, I love it. Well, and it's funny because like, you know, so I played college football, and without throwing anyone under the bus, like I've had that experience where even at a fairly high level and you know, pretty good, you know, whatever. I'm trying to be nice. Hopefully they're not listening. Whatever. But yeah, it's like, look, I would get injured, and all the focus would be on like, you know, that specific area of injury. It's like, look, okay, yes, obviously there's an injury here, but like, might this be a symptom of something else that's out of whack? Like, why does this keep recurring? Why does this keep happening? Like, is there something else like that I can do to like get healthy because I want to play? And so that was kind of my even like own personal first experience with like, there's got to be a better way to do things. And do you know Gavin McMillan out of like Sports Science Lab in he's in like Irvine, and so he Sports Science Lab is an incredible facility out of California. I think they have a couple all over the world. Okay. But he kind of first opened my eyes to like, there's a different approach. There's a way that we can be more innovative. We can think about movement differently. And you know, now looking back, why I started the show, my experiences there in college, training as, you know, a sophomore, have kind of put me on this path where it's like, well, what else is out there? So I love to hear, and I think you're absolutely right. Like, you know, depending upon what specialist you go speak to, whether it be a doctor or a PT, like sometimes the truth is like, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Yeah. Right. And so it's like there is a need for someone to communicate like a more holistic approach and hopefully communicate how a lot of these things work together. Because I myself, like, I'm super interested in it. I don't understand. Like, I would love for someone like yourself to package it up for me. So maybe we could even start. Could we just kind of go through each pillar, maybe one by one? And I feel like that would be really helpful for people listening.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. So we could break down like sleep first, just because I feel like, you know, with a lot of our clients that we're able to serve, you know, asking about their sleep habits is like one of the first things that we ask for. Yeah. I mean, man, if we kind of put it in the context of, we're sleeping, we at least hopefully all of us are going to bed every night, right? Like,
right.
It's something that we do on a daily basis, right? But it's something that, again, like no one ever told me about, there is ways to master your sleep and like the benefits of sleep. For me,
right,
the big aha is always seeing like the scientific and like the biological reasons and the reasonings behind why we should do something, right?
Yeah.
And so for sleep, right? Like, I mean, if we think about it, it's something that we do every single day. If we are waking up and we didn't get the, maybe not the best sleep in the world, but we didn't get good sleep, which is a very general term, then we're already kind of starting the day off on the wrong note, right? In terms of like attention, in terms of memory, in terms of just like appetite, in terms of sex drive, in terms of like growth hormone and testosterone. So now it's kind of going into like the physical realm. Like our sleep affects every single thing that we do, right? And a lot of times, it might be just as simple as like going to bed at a consistent time, right? Like our body craves consistency, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's tough to talk about sleep and the importance of sleep and the implications of sleep without like speaking to the circadian rhythm and like our biological clock, right? So maybe some people have heard of, term the circadian rhythm. Maybe some people have heard biological clock, or if, for people who have not heard any of those, think of it as just like a internal time clock within our body where like let's just say each hour, certain things should be like released into our blood. And then maybe certain things should be like excreted from our body. Right. And so like, for example, right, like when we're sleeping at certain portions of our sleep cycle, there's going to be a deposit of things like growth hormone, like things like testosterone that allow us to recover, right, or allow us to rebuild and regenerate muscle tissue, connective tissue. I mean, even the tissue that is, alive within our brain and within our neurons and our nervous system. Like, if we don't get good sleep and we don't allow our body to fall into the sleep cycles, right, that are innate within every human being,
right,
then things like that, like our attention, like our mood, like our appetite, like our ability to perform physically, are going to be diminished. So it's like, for us, it makes absolutely no sense that like if we are not, at least trying to master our sleep, then everything else throughout the day is already going to be subpar, right? And I think that's why why we like to start there is if we can start the day closest to 100, then everything else is already going to be like that. That baseline is already going to rise for everything else. So one of the things we usually like to talk about is like consistency. So, in an ideal world, getting into bed and asleep before 10 p.m. is perfect, is ideal, right? But even if maybe step number one is, okay, 11 p.m. is when you're going to go to bed every night, and you're going to wake up every day at, let's just say 7:30 a.m., right? Yeah. If we can just kind of get people to get on this consistent cycle, there is a lot of low-hanging fruit and things that people experience, whether it's, spiritually, emotionally, or obviously physically as well, where it's like the aha moment where people are like, oh, shoot, yeah, like, my sleep was maybe a little off, it was at 1 o'clock, maybe sometimes it's at 10 o'clock, maybe it's kind of scattered all the way around. But when I started to get more consistent, I started to realize that, mentally I feel refreshed. Physically, I feel ready to perform every day. So that is like one of the first things that we kind of just help people in understanding is, being consistent with sleep and the role of light, like how light impacts our ability to go to bed, right?
It's incredible. And we just had on, well, it's funny, and not to keep shouting back, but if people want to listen, we had Nick Littlehales on. I don't know if you know him. He's a sleep coach out of the UK, worked with like British Cycling. And I think at the end of that episode, he was talking just about how important light was. And that's one of the first places he starts when he's working with like new patients and athletes. But we also just had, a guy on by the name of Jared who founded Nature Quant. And what Nature Quant is seeking to do is help give people access to data as to the nature that exists around them, both at like a macro level, like, hey, where you live, like this is your access to nature. And what they're trying to do, part of what they're trying to do is demonstrate, hey, by way of this access to nature, like here's either the health risks that you might be more prone to due to lack of light, lack of clean air, lack of greenery, or the reduced risk that you have to congenital heart failure or whatever it is because of your access to nature. And one of the big contributors that we just talked about last week was light. So it's already really cool to hear that for you, that's at the forefront of your mind and one of the things that you're talking about specifically with regards to sleep.
Yes. I mean, it's funny. I just put up an Instagram post today talking about the importance of sunlight, right?
Yeah, I just saw it. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, man, it's so funny because we take it for granted. Again, I would have never thought about the importance of sunlight or sunlight even being important. About 2 or 3 years ago. And again, for me, the aha moment was, finding out about all the biochemical stuff and reactions that happen within the body. I spoke to the circadian rhythm and the biological clock. Sunlight is one of the biggest and main influencers of that biological clock to make sure that certain things are being deposited and certain things are being excreted at the right time. Sunlight is our way of understanding when is morning, when is midday, when is nighttime, which is kind of important because then it tells us, okay, morning sunlight, I am going to start to produce a little bit more of the wake up stress hormones, things that are going to make me more attentive. And then midday might kind of fit within that same realm, but also maybe aiding with digestions of food. And then towards the evening time, then we kind of start talking about that sunlight being a little bit more of a message for your body to hey, sleep time is up and coming. We should maybe start to produce a little bit more melatonin and a little bit less of the cortisol, the stress hormone. And so again, that's just that's low hanging fruit. We don't have to pay for this one. Granted, maybe some people don't live in an area with a lot of sunlight, but even if it's a very cloudy day, right? And there's barely any sunlight in the sky, there is still sunlight that is being able to be received by our body, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously at the other end of the spectrum is artificial light. Artificial light has the ability to really mess up our sleep and completely turn around that clock to think that, even though it's nighttime, we're getting this, artificial light into our system. And it's oh, cool. It's morning time again. Let's wake up. And so and it's funny because that's usually the culprit of a lot of people having a hard time falling to sleep at night. Obviously it's
screens, TV, phone, just all right in front of your face. Yeah, it's a hard habit to break. Yeah. But no, that makes a lot of sense, and I'm guilty of that. And that is one of the things personally, I've talked about in past episodes, but I've tried to cut out some of that light exposure. And I mean, that is one of the things that I personally notice makes a real measurable, tangible difference for me, not just in how long did I sleep, but man, how do I feel when I woke up?
Yeah.
If I read a book and stayed away from the TV or didn't use my phone for an hour and a half before bed, when I wake up, I'm I actually feel different than most mornings. And it's crazy. It's crazy we have to tell people this, right? Because it's we evolved over millions of years. Yep. And all of a sudden we just kind of forgot. But yeah, man, I can speak to how big of an impact that has.
For sure. 100%, man. And so, yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's obviously we can go on for probably a full hour about sleep and the importance of sleep or whatnot. But yeah, it's kind of the context that we usually like to look at sleep and helping people maximize that portion of their life. I guess the next pillar then we can look at is nutrition, right? And it's really just as simple as what we are putting in our body, is going to ultimately, decipher or decide the type of adaptations that we're going to come out with. So for example, if we put processed foods in our body, our body we're not made to run off of, and from an optimal standpoint, from being the most attentive, for being the best physically that we can be.
I think that's what everyone that. I think that's what I want, right? I want to know whether in the gym, at work, with my family, how do I perform at the highest level? There's nothing more frustrating than performing below that or feeling sluggish, especially if you're doing a podcast. There's nothing worse than feeling sluggish or reaching for words that you would normally come up with. Anyways, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
You're good. I mean, you hit it on the head though. I mean, that's ultimately like what motivates myself and Natalie every single day. I cannot stand, and again, this has been instilled in me from a young age. It's just, I didn't have the right tools in my tool set to be like, okay, no, I just have to master my sleep. Oh, then, okay, I just have to master what I eat. Okay. Then I just have, going down the list of like the pillars, right? But it's really as simple as that. I mean, if I put junk in my body, I am going to feel that. I'm not going to feel my best. Like, even if it's just mentally me just getting in my own head and thinking, God, I'm fat. I'm overweight. I'm a slug. Like, that is going to play a role in like how I ultimately, feel and perform every single day.
Right.
So it's really kind of looking at food as fuel, right? Like, the food that I'm going to put in my body, one, I want them to be as whole as possible. And when we say that, it's like when we look at the ingredient of the sweet potato, it's a sweet potato, right? Like, there isn't 20 different things that make up this one food that we're about to put in our body. Right. So like, that is like where we try to get people to get, closer and closer to every single day. Natalie actually handles a lot of like online nutrition coaching right now.
Oh, cool.
Which is perfect because I think she really resonates with that because of her own journey and the things that she's gone through. And now she's kind of able to like share that with other people and like understand that it's not just, okay, you went from eating pizzas and McDonald's every day to like, no, you're greens and sweet potatoes every day now. Like, that's not realistic. Would we love for people to go cold turkey like that? Yes, but like from a long-term perspective, that might not be the best approach for people, right?
And that's like such a drastic change. It's like you run the risk of losing folks along the way. Yeah.
It's just, having people understand their relationship with food. Right. And again, that's something that I had to come to terms with. I wasn't eating enough food. I mean, I think I was eating upwards of like 1,800 calories a day. And I'm a personal trainer and I am training, 8 clients a day or 8 classes a day.
Right.
I'm working out twice a day. My clients, just training them is like a workout altogether in itself. So it's like, when I started to change my relationship with food and started to understand that like, oh no, I actually need to be eating like 3,500 calories. My physical body started to completely change. Like, I've never had abs. I've never really wanted abs. I don't really care about abs. I care about having a strong core and something that allows me to go and perform physically on the basketball court or any other performance factor. But when I started to eat more food, it was weird. It was like, oh shit, I'm going to get big and fat again. And I just like muscled up. Everything in my body just got like stiffer, bigger, thicker. Wow. And I was like, oh wow. Like, I thought if I would have ate more, like, so again, it's just changing that relationship of how we view food and like how much food we actually think we need to eat,
Yeah.
So that's more than on the nutrition side, right? So just putting good whole foods in our body, right? Like our body was designed to do.
And one of the things, and don't let me put words in your mouth, make sure I'm understanding this right. I mean, is that just like safe general recommendation? And people who listen are like, yeah, of course you idiot. Like he's just saying eat whole foods. But like, I feel like there's so much, I don't know what the word is, not politicized, but like there's so many diets, so many fad diets. There's so many extreme versions of like eating. And I've always just this kind of goes back to what you're saying. Like I've found it's easier to make a positive change if it's something that is just a little bit easier to subscribe to. Yep. Whereas like a lot of these diets are so exclusionary that, like it becomes hard to function in day-to-day life. But like telling people, hey, look, like shoot for whole foods when you can just seems like intuitively to make like good sense.
Yes, 100%. I mean, it's tough, right? Like, unless we have a community of friends that are very like-minded in the sense of our approach to like nutrition and fitness and whatnot, like just lifestyle in general, it could be kind of challenging, man, especially if you're like the black sheep in your circle where like maybe you don't drink every night, maybe you don't have that like, the occasional beer when you go out or maybe, you don't really like eating at Buffalo Wild Wings, on Fridays with your friends, right? Like it's tough though, because when we start to maybe like sacrifice and compromise that, then certain people feel like they have to compromise like their relationships with people.
Yeah, you don't want to be the guy who's bringing like a plastic bag full of like celery and peanut butter everywhere you go, and then just pulling that out at Applebee's.
100%. I mean, no one wants to do that, but it's funny because Natalie, obviously Natalie is able to work in so much more depth in understanding with each client. Like, for example, they do a food sensitivity test. They try to get it when possible, when things are really not making sense. They'll start looking into like the microbiome and like how is each individual's gut, set up to work for itself right now. Is it working better with a certain, is it not like legumes? Does it not like working with higher amounts of carbohydrates? Is it, whatever the heck it may be, because there is a lot of individuality within individual. That makes sense. But, can we get people to, one, change their relationship with food, and then two, get to the point where it's like, no, it's okay. Like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go eat pizza, right? Like with my buddies. But, maybe the pizza I eat, like maybe I'm only eating 3 slices instead of 8. Right. Or maybe I'm, getting the gluten-free, or maybe I'm just getting the vegetarian pizza, like just like small little things to kind of just show and prove to yourself that like, no, like I'm putting a concerted effort to want to just take baby steps towards like getting myself to like eating whole foods.
Yeah.
Right? It's not plausible all the time. I mean, the holidays just passed. Everyone knows like mashed potatoes. Come on, bro. White bread with butter. Come on. I don't eat that 9 months out of the year, 10 months out of the year. But like, if I show up to my girlfriend's, family's house, like I'm going to eat. Like I'm just going to eat what they have, and not beat myself up for it, I guess.
No, that makes sense. Well, and one of the things that's interesting too is, like I said, you work with high level athletes. Your team is like the durable athlete. And what I think is just so telling is that, and I don't know if like, maybe I'm putting too much into this, but like, if you have 4 pillars, like the first 2 that you started with, at no point were we talking about like lifting, squatting, running. We started with like sleep, nutrition, and it's kind of, I think you said as much, like getting yourself to when you show up, like you're starting with a high baseline, an area where you can like at least perform from and not like at a detriment, with a bad night of sleep or a poor diet. And I just think that in itself is such like an important lesson.
Right. 100%. 100%. It's like we kind of said, right? It's like we want to be able to use all these methods to at least just show up every single day in the morning, or show up at our first, work event every single day, like at a very high baseline, like function at a very high level. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, it's obviously each one of these pillars, like I said, like we could go down a rabbit hole in terms of like, how can we like completely optimize, and what are all the little questions and things that we should be looking at, to kind of help people further their process and their journey in that specific pillar. Yeah. But these are obviously kind of some of the common points, speaking points that we will have initially. And then over time, the client's journey kind of dictates like where we go, like how we assess and how we analyze and go from there.
No, I love it. And I think, you use the term low hanging fruit, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, I would assume no matter who you are in what walk of life, like everything that's been talked about so far, like would probably worth attempting to like integrate into your daily routine.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. So we did sleep, we did nutrition, and then we'll do breath now. So
I can't wait to get into this one.
Yeah.
This is something I want to talk to you about.
Breath is funny because I remember like I still have my notebook. We're kind of just like sitting down, trying to figure out, okay, what are the pillars? What's the name of this? What do we want to call this? What do we want to stand for? Breath was kind of interchangeable with stress, the word stress, right? And again, like stress is a very general word. There's positive stress, there's negative stress, right? There's like, just because one stressor, so for example, let's just say a cold tub, right? I myself might look at a cold tub as like a very positive stress. I might respond to that in a way that like allows for a positive adaptation over time to happen for me. Some people could look at that same cold tub, never been exposed to it, get in and actually have that as something where, who knows, maybe they go into like a fucking, they unfortunately, I hope they don't, but who knows, maybe they have like a heart attack, maybe their heart stops,
right.
Maybe they're like, whoa, this is like out of this world. I cannot deal with this. So I think when we start talking about breath, it's really just teaching our body how to respond and not react, right? Things are going to happen throughout the day, right? Whether it be getting cut off when you're driving, whether it be missing a Zoom call, whether it be 5 minutes late to a podcast, girlfriend wakes up and she wants you to cook pancakes, but I want to read. Like there's these little things that kind of happen throughout our day, right? That are either looked at in a positive light or a negative light, right? And so I guess it's just kind of, helping people understand that at any point, at any time, without purchasing anything, that we can access our breath to allow us to be a little bit more present, in that specific moment, which then kind of gives us the keys to decide and have the most clear head as possible how we want to respond to a situation. Right.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that? Like, I think you said access your breath. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So, again, I think breath is very similar to like sunlight and sleep in that like we take it for granted, right? I mean, breath, we're constantly breathing, right? Without breath, I mean, it sustains our life. I think that if we became mindful to it in certain situations, like for example, in a very stressful situation, a situation where maybe you get cut off and you almost get in an accident and you're pissed off, right?
Right.
If we took an internal look, or if we had somebody filming, or we had, some things, some EMGs kind of hooked up, right, in certain portions of your body, like we might show like a heightened sense of activity of like heart rate and blood pressure and muscle activity and like stress hormone response, like in our body, right? So it's like becoming mindful to that when situations happen, like is our body just freaking out and going into overdrive and going into like stress mode, which is okay sometimes. Like that is good when we're working out. It's good if a lion is like attacking us. It's good if we have to kind of like access a lot of energy very quickly and get our body to be as attentive as possible. But for example, if we're getting ready to go to bed at night and we get an email we don't like, and that heightened sense of activity comes in, I mean, then that activity, that issue had is influencing your sleep, and then is influencing all the other things that are going within your body. So I guess from a very tangible standpoint, it's getting people to tap into when stressful situations happen, accessing our breath. And, for us specifically, when we say accessing our breath, we try to get to closing our mouth right away and breathing in and out through our nose, right? There's very specific mechanisms that we can use. For example, we have like what we call, and I learned this and I read this in The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McKeown.
I'll have to read that.
Dude, oh man, that is the book that put everything in perspective for me and like the big around breath. Yeah. You'll love that book. He has
Oxygen Advantage. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Oxygen Advantage. So he has a mechanism in there called breathe light to breathe right. And it's basically just kind of teaching people to like slow. So instead of going like a hard inhale, like as hard as we can in terms of amplitude of like power of our breath, let's try to like ease like that inhale as like slowly as long as we can. Yeah. And slowly let that filter into our slow exhale. So rather than being like, it's being more like so subtle to the point where like you couldn't even tell I was breathing. Like if you were standing right next to me, you almost would have a hard time hearing me inhale and exhale.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So one, that's very hard to do in a stressful situation. For example, if someone is training and you're getting done at the end of a set, just try doing that, right? Like try closing your mouth and going to your breath here. And it's very challenging. Like you have to be very intentional, and I don't want to get too woo-woo, but you have to really be as present as possible to be able to get your body to control that regulation of your breath. You know what I mean? Because
no, and what's interesting to me too is, with sleep, right? It's so crazy that it takes up roughly a third of our life, how little we know about it and how little people pay attention to it. Number one, that's crazy. But I do feel there's a growing awareness around sleep. I think the sunlight piece of it, right? Again, it should be such common sense. Yep. I'm equally as guilty. I work remote right now, and there will be days where I'm like, oh shit, I didn't go outside once.
Yeah.
But this breath thing, I mean, it's happening constantly, automatically without like conscious thought. Mm-hmm. It's just so funny that like, it can be such an incredible resource to change literally like what's going on in your body physiologically. Yet I have to ask the question, it's like, well, what do you mean? How are you doing that? Like, how do you use your breath? Like it should be something that we like know how to access. we've taken it for granted. It's so overlooked as like, a mechanism to change something as opposed to just this thing we do to kind of like get through the day.
100%. 100%. I guess that's like what we try to get people to do is like use your breath like for you, right? So that it works for you and it's not working against you.
Yeah.
And working against you could be the quick, the shallow breathing, right? Like what some people would say, chest breathing isn't terrible, right? Like there are muscles in our body that are designed to breathe in our lower half and up here in the thoracic. And so like, that's okay that we can use that area to breathe.
Yeah.
But if we're predominantly chest breathing throughout our entire day, and then ultimately throughout our entire life, we're not using muscles that were designed to breathe within our diaphragm and within like the lower back region, right? Like, so it's like never using your pec muscle or like never using your bicep or like never using your quad. Like that's not good. Like that wouldn't,
you wouldn't stand for it.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't sound like it'd be a good thing.
Yeah.
But also, right, like that shallow breath also brings upon like what you just said. It brings upon like a chemical reaction within our body that usually is not going to be beneficial for us and from a long-term perspective. Could we use some shallow breathing, as a way to maybe hyperoxygenate our body and get us like ramped up and amped up before like a physical performance or before something that's, I guess physically demanding? 100%. I think there's a context and there's a time for that. But for the most part, when we're just going throughout our day and we're kind of going through like our daily routine, if that is the way we are breathing, right, then it's like, we're not maximizing our breath for one, but then we're also not maximizing like internally what is being like actually released and what is being communicated in terms of like the environment that our body is going through inside.
Yeah. How, and let me ask you this, because I know, how are you on time? Are you good to keep going or do you have another commitment? I want to be respectful.
No, yeah, we're good. We're good.
How do you use, if you don't mind me asking, how do you use breath work? And maybe the question is, do you use breath work? I'm assuming the answer is yes, but how do you use breath work within like the context of actually training?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can use it. I would say one from like the very first thing I do in the morning after hydrating is like movement, right? Some type of like mobility sequence, some type of, whatever you would want to contextualize it and call it. But it's a routine that I've been doing now for like the last 3 years. And for me personally, I know that, after a long night's sleep, again, I don't know if it's a long night of sleep, could just be maybe my posture in the last hour or so when I watch TV before I go to bed, or it could just be, my posture of while I'm sleeping. But my lower half, right, my diaphragm and my like lower back specifically has a hard time like expanding, right? So my lower half naturally in the morning is not like up to par and clicking, right? Some days yes, but like most often not.
Is that like tightness?
I would kind of consider, I would assume it has to do with some tightness. I would not be surprised because of like the way we set up. So usually at night for like the last hour and a half, I'll put my blue blockers on and I'll just lie down on the couch and I'll just be completely slumped. I'm like, you know what, man, I spent all my day trying to be as mindful as possible as what I eat, how I'm moving, how I'm breathing, like the vibe and the energy that I bring around everybody. Like I just give myself that hour sometimes to just be slumped. I don't care if I'm slouching.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like I move throughout my day. I'm not in any pain. I can put my body through that stressor and know I could be okay with it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's really just from me, like just kind of slouching on the couch, just like lying down in like weird positions that ultimately, like while I'm sleeping, I wouldn't be surprised that like my body is probably not going into like a deep diaphragmatic breath and like fully expanding like everything without my body. So I would probably say it's that. I could potentially just be training as well. Right? Like who knows, like some of the stuff for like resistance training, like obviously there's an aspect of like taking a full inhale and creating like that intra-abdominal pressure to kind of help turn on like your core, right? And help like brace everything through your midline. Like it could potentially be like a byproduct of that, of like when I'm doing some really heavy trap bar stuff or like some really heavy split stance lunges or whatever it may be. But yeah, I would be surprised to say if it was one thing. I think it's just kind of like a culmination of a lot of different things. You know what I mean?
No, and that's a good point too, right? And it kind of goes back to what you said before. It's like can't just focus on like the one isolated area that might be affected. And that same thing goes for like what's contributing to the issue, right? It's like, it's probably the real answer is it's probably a multitude of a lot of things over time that come into play for sure.
100%. But yeah, I'm sorry to answer your question though, how I use it from a physical standpoint. Like there's certain positions through that morning routine where I'll pause, I'll add like a little isometric contraction, and then I'll try to breathe into like those different areas of my body. So like lower back, diaphragm, upper thoracic, posterior thoracic. And then over time, I try to kind of go from like the ground up. So I'll find almost like when people try to say like put your mind in like a certain portion of your body.
Yeah.
So that is like a very big practice for me in the morning. Like that is like, I think how I kind of allow myself to be as present as possible is because like you can't be thinking of other things and like trying to breathe into some of those areas, right? Like even though I've been doing it religiously, like I can still find myself on days where I'm already thinking about the 10 emails that I need to respond to instead of
that for sure
moment, right? And so that is like one aspect where I use breath. It's almost like a restorative way. It's almost like a way to get my baseline right up to par. So as I continue to show up throughout my day, I know at least my breathing muscles and my body is at a really good baseline.
Well, what's cool too, so I don't mean to interrupt, but you mentioned mindfulness as well. Like that's kind of like, I don't even know, this might be a term, but like it's like active mindfulness. Like, you're not sitting there meditating, but to your point, by focusing so acutely on like getting your breath to like one part of your body, there's not enough brain power to then all of a sudden be thinking about those 10 emails. So it's kind of, I hadn't heard of that, but that sounds like a really kind of cool way to start your day with like almost some form of mindfulness, but then also has all these other benefits too.
100%. Yeah. Because there's great people out there, right, that speak to mindfulness and the power of mindfulness, different techniques and kind of protocols that people will take them through. But I'm always a big fan of like breaking down to the principles of what people are trying to teach. And ultimately, mindfulness, right, is all around like trying to put your thoughts and your mind into like one thing, right, into like one aspect and like completely visualizing and becoming one with that aspect.
Yeah.
And so for me, I kind of use it because, for me, I'm more of the sporting background, right? I'm more of the physical background. If somebody would have told me 3 years ago, hey, sit in a cross-legged standpoint and I want you to, who knows, touch your nose and I want you to like, with every inhale, like feel your nose with your finger, like, who knows? I don't know if I would have resonated with that. I don't know if I would have been in the right mental space for that. For me, I know that like working with athletes, right, like the high level athletes, again, they might be in that same category where they're like, dude, don't turn off the lights and put me on my back and make me breathe. Like, so it's like if I could kind of mix in and use like physical movement as that bridge to kind of help people understand things that they can access to ultimately optimize like their health and well-being, then dope. Like, how can I do that? And I think that's like where that practice like stemmed from, which was like, how can I bridge that? How can I bring mindfulness in without calling it mindfulness so that people don't get freaked out by it?
But you're absolutely right? Because it does, and I think it's breaking down, but it has a stigma, right? Meditation, maybe more so. Mindfulness, I feel like people are a little bit more like welcoming to. Yeah. But no, that's great, and that's a perspective I hadn't heard before, so that's awesome.
Yeah, totally, brother. And then obviously there's also aspects of like, okay, from like a work capacity day, I want your intensity to be super low, right? Like I want to just have oxygen as the main source of energy that you're going to be utilizing. I also just want your body to get better at utilizing oxygen. We're not necessarily going to do that at always a high intensity of working out, right? So we're not going to always have a 20-10. We're not always going to have a Tabatas work set that's going to be killing you, right? A lot of times I love working in the beginning of programs and on certain off days where all the workout, the whole entire workout, and very, very low intensity. So usually body weight is breathing through your nose. And the second you feel like you're about to lose that, I want you just to stop moving. I just want you to sit there, or I want you to lie there. I want you to kind of come back to your breath. I want you to come back to the breathe light, breathe right? So kind of like that, like slowing of inhale and exhale. And then get back into your exercise movement, right? Because we start talking about like recovery days, right? Like active recovery days.
Which is something I would love to ask you about if we have time as well. But
for sure. I mean, I think the principle behind that, though, like active recovery. I mean, obviously that could be so many different things. That could be like a neurocharge day, right? Where like the speed and the intent of movement is fast and quick, but the amount of fatigue that is experienced is super, super low, right? Like there'll be oftentimes where we can do something like that. And then in between sets, right, as a rest, we're going straight to our nose and we're doing the breathe light, breathe right type of deal, or at least maybe a variation of it. Or, you know,
and the reason for the breathing through the nose again, it's because it actually creates some other like I can do physiological responses that you wouldn't get if you were just kind of breathing through your mouth or breathing through both.
That's a great question. So I'm going to try to regurgitate this again from Oxygen Advantage.
I can't wait to read that. I'm definitely going to pick that up probably today.
You're going to love that book. Anybody out there that reads that has not and wants to is going to love that book.
Awesome.
So yeah, he speaks to like the benefits of breathing through the nose, right? So like one, our nose is like our first barrier in our first barrier of defense when we start talking about immune system, right?
Right. Okay.
When we're breathing into our nose, like our nostrils and certain things that we have within our nasal cavity are kind of there as like a detection for any bacteria or viruses or whatnot, right? And then second, the temperature of the air is actually at a more optimal temperature once the oxygen is actually like inside of our body, right?
Oh, wow.
The nose as opposed to coming through the mouth. Yeah. I think the word, if I remember correctly, is like, it's like a little bit more humidified. It's a little bit more warmer temperature compared to like breathing in through your mouth. Right.
Oh, interesting. Well, yeah. And it's like, to your point, again, think about like there's a whole filtration system that it's getting run through compared to all those mouth breathers out there.
Yes, 100%. And there's something in there. And again, like this is like, I've had a hard time because I almost kind of want to play like devil's advocate a little bit, but he does have a spot in there where he starts to speak to if people are breathing through their nose, then chances are they're going to be breathing through their diaphragm. I don't know if it's like a direct correlation. And I don't even know if there's a direct where if you breathe through your nose, you're going to breathe through your diaphragm. I don't think there's that specific connection, but I think he does state that where if we're able to use our nose, then our ability to access our diaphragm is going to be easier facilitated compared to breathing through your mouth.
Yeah.
Again, he has a whole reasoning behind that. But I will agree with him in the sense that, like, yeah, I mean, when I breathe through my nose, and who knows, I don't know if this is a byproduct of me just been doing it for so long, but I do have the tendency to breathe more through my diaphragm utilize my diaphragm and my lower half, which when you breathe through your nose, and then you start breathing through your diaphragm and you're moving your diaphragm, then you're able to start touching and stimulating the vagus nerve, which is the nerve that helps shift people into not parasympathetic, but like more parasympathetic, for that spectrum, which is great, right? When we start talking about stress, when we start talking about people always being in a go, go, go mode, if I can get you through your nose, right? Like sympathetic, which is like go, 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 parasympathetic, which is like rest and digest, like that marker is just going to kind of inch its way slowly more parasympathetic as you continue to breathe and stimulate that vagus nerve through your diaphragm.
You just reminded me of a previous conversation where one of the recommendations, it was the nutritionist for the Giants. He was saying one of the best things you could do is like do some breathing exercises before you eat. Kick yourself into that parasympathetic. And like when you were saying that, into that like digestion, it just like a light bulb went off. So it's funny. It's like all these conversations are coming back together during this one episode. But that's so interesting.
But that's the great part, I think, in terms of like the community that you're kind of reaching out for and asking questions and trying to, pick their brains is like, the last thing we want to be is dogmatic, right? Like that's the last thing I want to do is be dogmatic in my approach. So it's like, if we're all saying the same thing, maybe in our own little way,
right?
That's a good sign. You know what I mean?
A win, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then I want to say maybe one other reason for the nose had to do with like the amount of like oxygen pressure in terms of like if it's on the lower lobe of your the lower lobe of your lung as opposed to like the upper lobe of your lung. Like the oxygen, I believe, is like able to diffuse the blood to go more towards like the lower lung, which like allows your body to like better utilize oxygen.
Wow.
The big one is being able to balance the ratio between carbon dioxide and oxygen. So like, when we exhale, that's carbon dioxide, right? Usually it's the byproduct, right, of everything, all the processes that utilize oxygen within our body. So it's like the waste, right? We're getting rid of it with the exhale. And usually people are like, they would think that like, no, exhale more, like get the waste out. But the Bohr effect, which is like something from chemistry, I definitely don't remember learning, but of course he has it in the book.
It's out there. You can look it up if you really care, folks.
Yeah. Actually, no, I read my organic chemistry book the other day. Yeah. Speaking to the Bohr effect. No, so the Bohr effect, though, has to kind of do with like oxygen and carbon dioxide and how there has to be an optimal ratio of the two in order for your tissues to actually be able to like receive the oxygen from the blood. So because you like inhale a lot doesn't mean you're going to utilize that oxygen, right? Like there's a lot of different factors that play into that. For example, like the acidity of like, like the pH of your blood. Like if you're eating more processed foods, that's going to start to influence that, right? Or if you're a very shallow breather, that's going to influence your body to really not be able to utilize oxygen into different tissues, like muscle tissue, connective tissue, like brain tissue, like neuronal tissue. Like there is, a big implication with like if we can use our nose, that ratio between carbon dioxide and oxygen is going to be more optimal to where there's going to be a little bit more carbon dioxide in your body. But because of that, that's going to allow oxygen to diffuse into your tissues and like actually use oxygen, which is dope. Dope because I'm again, no one's ever told me that.
No, it's amazing. And it's funny, like only in the last 2 years, like, so when I sleep, I mean, if people actually watch it on YouTube, I've had my nose broken many times, some being punched in the face, some basketball. But it's like, I had a lot of tough time breathing my nose, especially at night. So what I've really quick, easy fix, I use those Breathe Right strips and it keeps it open. And I mean, again, that was one of, for me, sleep wise, the biggest changes in terms of waking up feeling more restored, because I could tell like my mouth wasn't dry. Like I could tell I actually breathed through my nose at night. And it's funny now, like hearing you explain all these positive benefits, to me, I was like, well, I just need to breathe better at night. My broken nose is preventing me from like breathing as well as I could. But now it's like, well, there's probably all these other processes going on that I wasn't even aware of that are allowing me to wake up feeling more restored. And again, like start the day with that higher baseline. So, just it's so interesting. It's something, again, like to your point, right? Like I didn't know that. Most people don't know that. But I think if they did, they would probably take the time to like breathe through their nose a little bit more.
For sure. And it's funny because, usually like when we're doing, or when I'm doing like recovery sessions with athletes or with anybody really, again, like the whole like underlying principle behind like a recovery day, it's going to look very different for, different people in different parts of their journey. But like the big portion of it is to like push people into more parasympathetic. Like chances are they're like sympathetically driven throughout their day. And so how can we just give them, even if it's an hour, how can we give them an hour of like parasympathetic dominant like time and movement, right? Or movement and breath, whatever it may be that we're doing. And so being able to go to the nose is like the easiest way for us to kind of just be like, one, you can't talk when you're breathing through your nose. So just like, shut up, right? Just be quiet. Yeah. And two, you got to be present to that, right? Like a lot of people have a hard time just breathing through their nose in general, like just standing or sitting. And it could be for different reasons. But again, if it's something you never really put a lot of intention to, then it's not going to be as easy as we might think it is,
Well, let me ask you this too. Like say you're on the rower or you're a sprinter or you're doing something with like sustained effort and output. When you're like running, does it also make sense to like what I've always heard, but like I'm not like, it's tough to do is like breathe through your nose first and out through your mouth. A, I guess, is that true? Or B, like, when you're actually doing like a high exertion activity, does this kind of still hold true that you should breathe in through your nose first, or like does that start to break down at some point?
That's a great question, because I feel like people could probably justify, A or B to be like right.
Okay, and
I think the funny part is like I think you've heard it probably plenty of times. Like it depends, right? Like it's right. It depends. The first aspect you brought up, which was like, okay, you're running. Do you want to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth? I would say that there is a benefit in that for sure. In that, like I spoke to, like in the oxygen advantage, he speaks to like the humidification of air, right? So like if we're doing a constant, activity, like a pretty dynamic activity, like running or rowing, like if we can breathe in through our nose, then chances are like that air and the oxygen that we're breathing in is going to hopefully be able to be utilized, right? But if the intensity starts to rise, then obviously like our nose is not as big as our mouth. Right. Like what we can breathe in total through our nose is not the same as our mouth. Our mouth can obviously pull in a lot more air per inhale. Right.
Yeah.
So that is kind of where I would say great to use your nose. But if we're going to get into some high intensity work, chances are it's probably going to be very hard for you to keep that up. So I would therefore say like, I wouldn't even really preach the nose. I would just kind of say, hey, like breathe.
Get oxygen.
Get oxygen in your body. Now, granted, if there's little pockets or time where you kind of want to bring things down a little bit and try to just like slow your heart rate, slow your breath rate down, then for sure, getting into your nose, a couple little inhales and exhales there through the nose, like I'm sure people will feel like that's like that shift and that like quick change, but it really just all kind of depends like on what the goal is for your training that day. Like what is the goal of the training that day, but also like long-term, like what's the adaptation that we're shooting for?
Yeah. Well, and now my wheels are spinning thinking about someone who does like a marathon, right? And again, I've never run a marathon, but I'm wondering, I'll ask the next person who's like a proficient marathon runner, I'll ask him, but I'm curious now, cause it's like, that's such like a long sustained activity where like small gains over time really might add up. Like, I wonder if there's, and maybe but like if there's thought behind that, it's like, hey, look, like if you're getting a little bit more out of each breath over 2 hours, like I wonder if that adds up for them.
That's a great question. To be honest, I've only really worked with like one person who runs like long distance.
Yeah.
I'll be honest though. I think that if you're a high level athlete and you're part of like the 1% and you're looking to get better in any way you can.
Yeah. Eke out every small percentage of it.
1000%. Even if you're not even incorporating it in your running days, even if it's just like as a standalone practice of 15 minutes of outdoor walking, only breathing through your nose, then like, I think that there's still a lot of merit and a lot of benefit that could come along with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sorry, I took us down a tangent, but this is so interesting. Well, and again, like, we've been going at this like an hour and 10 minutes, and we haven't even gotten to anything like movement related yet. Like, like those three principles, but I just love this concept because all three of those things are areas where people can start to take control of just like throughout their day. Like thinking about optimization and well-being, like to your point, when you were training those clients, and even if you had them 7 days a week, and your girlfriend said, hey, look, like they're not getting the results that they should be, or you're not taking them where they are. It's like these three areas are things that you can start to control, like outside the gym all throughout the day, which I think hopefully for people, for me, it kind of feels empowering. It's like, look, there's things I can kind of be doing all throughout the day. They're going to make me better in the gym, but also that like I can be working on at any point throughout the day.
100%. And that's like the big, message that we try to get across to clients and to just people, audiences on social media or whatnot, or anybody come across is like, hey, a lot of this stuff, like you don't need anything. You don't need to go buy something. There isn't like this extra thing that you got to get in order to do this. It's like, you can like make these changes just for yourself without anything to assist.
Yeah.
These are things that you can do that are ultimately just going to help you feel better so that you can go and do whatever the heck it is that you do on a daily basis, but at a like completely different, level, at a higher level.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, like we haven't even really talked about the movement stuff, which is obviously like a lot of inspiration, right? And a lot of like our background comes from like the movement aspect. Like I think that was like the foundation. That was like the start of going down this health and wellness route. But yeah, I mean, even then, like, right, we're really big on body weight movement, right? And being able to just master your own body first, be able to articulate and move your joints and your body, to the best of your ability. And of course, best of your ability is going to look different for every single person, depending upon what they do on a daily basis, or maybe what they feel inside their body on a daily basis. But if we can't do that at a very high level, or at least at a solid baseline, then everything else that we do with external weight or external load, like I would argue that maybe you're not maximizing your time there, whether it's how you feel after, or whether it's the numbers that you're putting up, or the capacity at which you're able, to keep up that work rate. Yeah, that's kind of like, I guess in a nutshell as well, kind of like our stance, like on the movement aspect, right? Is, you don't need an hour in the gym. You don't need an hour of kickboxing or high intensity exercise, right? It's all really about, a big part of it is like steps. So we're really, really big on 10 to 15,000 steps a day.
Oh,
right?
Okay. Yeah. Can we dive into that a little bit? Because that's the first time I've really heard that. Yeah. What is the reason that that number, that range is kind of so important for folks?
Yeah. So I think that number is a really good estimate for just like the amount of movement that us as humans should be accessing on a daily basis from a health perspective. And this is just like to make sure that, energy and dead cells don't get stagnant in one area and they're actually able to move with oxygen and blood throughout your body. This is to make sure that, after, or as you're eating throughout your day, that you're walking and you're utilizing like glucose, and your body and your tissues are actually like taking that energy from your blood. When we walk, we create like this cycle of fluid, not just like with oxygen and blood, but also with like lymph, right? Like the lymph nodes and like lymph fluid, which is ultimately like our body's like recycle system, like taking out dead cells and throwing them out. Now, I don't want to get too deep on it, but like I would believe that many, not all, but many autoimmune disorders or diseases that people are experiencing are because of like this lack of fluid movement throughout our body. And movement can happen with us like physically moving. It could happen with vibration therapy. There also could be like, like people who love jumping like on trampolines, but it's got to involve some sort of like movement. There's got to be some way to be able to move materials from one area to the next area of your body. You know what I mean?
That's another one where I'm having an epiphany. That makes a lot of sense. I'm just thinking too. I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. My father passed away a few years ago, but in like his later years, and there's a bunch of health complications. But one of the things, he a lot of fluid, right? A lot of swelling. And of course, like kind of a snowball effect, like he also stopped moving, like, he became very sedentary, and then the problem complicated. So I'm thinking about a very extreme example of what that looks like, but I'm also just kind of thinking about, someone like myself, like I consider myself active, right? And I make sure to like, I go to the basement and I use our home gym and I do that. But then there's days where like, I'm just stuck in front of the computer the whole day. Right. And I'm like, man, did I get anywhere near 10,000 or 15,000 steps? And, again, there could be a lot of other, I don't want to like say that was the only reason, but like, there's some days where I'm just like definitely retaining a lot of water. Maybe it's what I ate. Maybe it's the humidity, but I'm just like swollen. You can see it in my face. I can feel it. I can't get my wedding ring off. And now I'm kind of like looking back being like, man, like, has that been in any way related to times where I'm not active? Or I've been really sedentary. And so maybe I'll kick it to you. Like, are those some of the byproducts? Am I putting too much in what you said?
I would say, the candy ass answer again is like, it could be.
Right. For sure.
100%. Like, does it have the ability to influence that? 1,000%, 100%. Obviously, like, it's tough to say, just like anything else, right? Like, it's one thing. Like, I believe that a lot of things are ultimately like,
it's like, you're lazy. You're lazy and you're getting swollen. Nailed it. Move on. Next topic.
but it could also just be like, maybe, you have been sweating. Maybe you worked out really, really hard for the last 3 or 4 days and you've done a great job of drinking water, but maybe you're not getting enough minerals in, right? Like maybe just the foods, maybe the foods you're just eating usually have very high minerals, but maybe the last couple of days they just haven't been, right? Or you just didn't sleep very well the last couple of nights. It could be so many different things that ultimately add up into like a stagnation of energy. And it's funny, like, even if we wanted to break it down even more, I would say that all four of our pillars, like those call to actions, right? Those things that we want people to kind of start to implement, those things have the ability to get stagnant energy moving. get moving, right? Like that's ultimately, like, I think, in my opinion, this is just simply my opinion, that like a lot of what the sicknesses and what people are experiencing, not just, this year because of COVID, but like
Sure.
with everything in general, autoimmune disorders, I think a lot of it could really just be, I hate using the word fixed, but if there's another word I could use besides fix, a lot of these things could be resolved if people just simply took a little bit more mindfulness into like their daily lifestyle and their daily habits, which are usually around how do you sleep, how do you eat, what's your daily stress like, and how often are you moving. If we can just put a little bit more into each one of those four, chances are like our health and like what you had said, those weird days of maybe it's, I can't get my wedding ring off, I feel swollen, or damn, I just can't concentrate today, like the words are just not in my mouth today. I can lift 225, why can't I lift 225 today? Like what the hell is the deal? Like chances are it's not that one thing. It's not something within that area that is giving you that issue. It's usually something else that you did hours before, days before, or haven't done that's leading you to that crossroad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and what's so cool about all this too, and why I think people are really going to enjoy this conversation is it's like things that we take for granted, but something like going for a walk. Like typically when I hear steps, right, I've always thought like I don't need to track my steps. Like I'm super active. I lift, I do plyos, I do all this shit. Like that's not me, right? I'm not like, I imagine like the Midwestern mom hitting the track with her girlfriend, you know what I mean? And counting steps. Like that's what I see in my head. But like the way you described it, it's like, hey, there's benefits about drainage, moving stagnant energy, I think is the way you put it. That actually makes me be like, man, I think my phone can count steps. Like I want to turn that on. And like, it's cool because it's kind of like it's forcing me, and I imagine listeners, to look at some of these things that we do every day from a new perspective and to like why they matter so much.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about what you mean when you say stagnant energy? And I know we could probably go for another 3 hours. So I'm probably gonna have you back on the show. But could you talk a little bit about what you mean about stagnant energy? Because I feel like that is probably really important. Like you said, that's kind of what all four of these things are getting at.
Yeah, definitely. So if our body is functioning in the way that we would like, and like a human body was designed to function, right? There is like the turnover of cells consistently, right? Like new cells are coming, new cells are dying. And it's happening, to be honest, I don't even really want to give a number or a date with that, but I will go as far as to say at least on a daily basis, there is that happening. I'm sure a scientist could probably come on and say every like 7 minutes or every like so often there's this recycling.
Someone will send me a nasty email and then I'll share it with everyone.
Please, I mean, what, I want to go on the limit. I remember it saying like every 4 minutes. I don't know about every cell, but there is this process of like constant, right? And so in an ideal world, those dead cells eventually get excreted throughout our body, like whether it be, through our feces or through just like sweat or whatever the heck it may be, right? There's different ways our body can kind of get rid of these different dead cells, right? So when those dead cells don't leave your body, right, because they're not getting recycled out, because they're not going through that fluid system, then what ends up happening is they literally just sit there. And so let's just say, for example, our kidneys, okay? So our kidneys are an organ. Our kidneys are made up of tissues, and tissues are made up of cells. So everything is like a cell. At some way, our hair, everything is like made up of just the smallest thing, which is like a cell. And so those cells, those dead cells, don't leave. They literally will just sit within that space. And those dead cells, it's like having a messed up or rotting, for example, we just bought a home. We found some walls within our restroom area that had like termite and like water damage, right?
Yeah.
That is not good. Like if you're breathing that in, or eventually like there could be things that are going to be catastrophic. And it's the same thing with our body, right? It's like if we're just leaving these dead areas within our organs, right, or within different portions of our body, that is usually like where we start seeing these sicknesses and these ailments. I mean, cancer is ultimately, and again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a specialist, but from my elementary understanding, cancer is really like the reproduction, right, of like mal cells, of cells that are not good.
Yeah.
Or buildup of dead and like mal cells. And so if we don't ask those things to move, right, through our daily lifestyle and daily habits, and those things just sit there, that's going to lead to sickness. That's going to lead to us feeling some type of way that is not going to be positive in any manner. I try to keep that as general as possible. And again,
it's great. That's all I need to know. I don't need to go any deeper. I'm all surface. That's one thing listeners know is I'm all surface here over at the Professional Athlete. No, that's awesome. Well, maybe we can end on this. And then I want to talk a little bit about how folks can get in touch with you, follow what you're doing, and hopefully interact with what you guys are doing with the Durable Athlete. But I'd just be interested to know, like, for you, kind of what is your process to continue to like evolve and innovate and take in new information? Because like you said, right, you were at UT, but you realized like you were getting access to like, there's not a higher level of athlete than what you were able to work with. Yeah. And the hands-on experience you were getting was so valuable. As you continue to kind of like go on this, your own professional journey, like what is your process for like continuing to like adapt?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question, man. I feel like it's really just like a daily battle, right? Like every single day is going to present its own battle. I try to be consistent with my morning routine.
Okay.
Right? I know I've been harped on by a lot of different people over the past couple of years on like morning routines and evening routines. But I mean, yeah, my morning routine is very important to me.
Oh, maybe we can talk about that too, if you don't mind sharing. Yeah.
So that morning routine usually has to do with hydration. It has some type of movement, whether it's walking outside or doing some movement here. And it has to do with breath, again, whether the breath is outside or whether it's in a movement practice. And then reading. I'm really, really big on just trying to just keep myself, like, it doesn't have to be a book every day. It doesn't have to be a book every month, but just some sort of education, whether it's, again, reading I subscribe to Chris Beardsley strength and conditioning research reviews.
Oh, cool. I'll check that out. I wasn't familiar.
Super cool, bro. Super, super cool. Like,
okay.
It's maybe like 10 or 15 studies each month and just kind of gives out like the basis and understanding of like what they're trying to prove.
Oh, wow.
Just like a very general understanding, like if the thing is talking about eccentric training, it'll give some results from past experiments where it speaks to like, well, this is what eccentric training does to this and this.
Oh,
and this.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's super digestible. I love that. So whether it's that or whether it's just like a new book that I find online or whether it's even just listening to a podcast, to be honest, I just want to make sure that like the process doesn't stop. And again, it's just like anything else that we preach, right? Like we don't have to go full throttle, like 3 hours, I'm going to read a book today, right? I'm more of the type where it's like, no, if I can just consistently show up to this every single day, then I feel way more comfortable with that because over time I feel like, it's just, I don't know, my body craves consistency. Maybe I've just done it for so long now that like whenever I get out of that routine, I just kind of feel like, okay, like I'm okay with it. I'll deal with it. I won't let it affect me and bug me mentally, but I just know that I'm at my best when I can do that.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. And like, how long does your morning routine usually take you? Because I think, the world's a little bit different this last year, but like what most people would say is like, hey, look, I would love to do that. I would love to have a walk in the morning. I would love to do this. But the reality is like, I got to hit the road because I got to get to the train at X or I got to get the kids ready to school. So I'm always interested to hear like for you, like how long does your morning routine typically take?
Usually about like 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And of course, like that's me forcing myself to wake up a little bit earlier. And that's me forcing myself like not to rush through it. That's me forcing myself like, hey, like you're already going to be go throughout your day. Like just shut your mind up, which is tough. It's very tough to do, at least for me.
Yeah.
Like shut your mind up and just be present for these, like, for this 30 or 45 minute window, whatever time window that I have that morning. Usually reading is like 10 to 15 minutes. Stretching is usually about 10 to 15 minutes. And then after that, it's just kind of like, okay, if I can, I'll take the dog outside and go for a walk. That would be ideal. Read, move, and obviously hydration is within that. But then getting outside, right away, getting into some sun. And then usually it's like, man, I don't know how many steps. I don't really track my steps. I know that like I usually walk enough, but like I got outside, I got sunlight, I moved, I read. So I kind of, fulfilled my mind. I had somewhat of a mindfulness and a meditation practice and I'm not even an hour into my day.
Yeah.
Right? That makes me feel like, other than just being able to look at that on the list and be like, cool, like I'm doing something today, like mentally, that just like revitalizes me. It gives me energy and to go into every session, because there's no way as a trainer and anybody, you know, like a therapist or any sort of coach, like there's no way we can show up and fill other people's cups up when we're like halfway. There's just no way we can do that. You know what I mean? And maybe you can do it one time a day, maybe twice a day and get away with it. But if you got like 5 or 6 clients a day, it's just not going to happen. And people, you're not going to show up as like the best version of yourself. And to be honest, I just can't stand that. And I think Natalie is in the same boat, that like, you just can't stand half-ass. I just don't want to be half-ass. You know what I mean? There's no worse feeling than feeling like half-ass.
Yeah, you said a couple of really great things there, but I completely agree. I mean, my biggest point of frustration and one of the driving forces for starting the show was like, feeling like you're showing up half-ass somewhere. You know, or like I hate feeling sluggish. I mean, it actually makes me upset, because I also, you know, when I'm not doing this, I try to make a little money so my family can eat, and I do sales. And so like, you know, whatever I'm doing, I'm usually talking, and in some capacity, like I have to be sharp. And so when I feel like slow mentally or physically, like I really notice it now. And maybe I'm also getting older. But yeah, man. So I'm always looking like, is there anything I can do? And I think a lot of the stuff we talked about today is stuff I'm really going to try and incorporate to make sure that like more often than not, I'm showing up with a higher baseline. Yeah. I'm not showing up half-assed. I'm giving myself a fighting chance that day to kind of like, you know, be my best self. And I don't mean that in like the cheesy self-help way. I mean, like literally perform at my highest level, mentally, physically, et cetera. No, so man, dude, this is fantastic for people who, we talked about your Instagram profile a little bit, which I was creeping on today. For people who want to follow along and get in touch, you know, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, definitely. So like you said, we got the Instagram page. Mine is just my name, Cristian.Plascencia. My girlfriend is Natalie.Higby. We usually try to post, you know, at least one thing every single day on that platform. And then we also have the Durable Athlete website, which is just durableathlete.com. And then about 2 months ago, we released our Durable Athlete app.
Awesome.
And so very interesting, right? It's like, okay, we have a fitness background. We love to work out. We train people on a consistent basis. You know, Natalie works with people on a nutrition consulting basis, right? So it's kind of like, how do we like turn this into an app? Because it's so like everything is so individualized sometimes, right? Like the answer is usually like, it depends. Like, sure, it might work. It just kind of depends. So it's like, how do you make something that's kind of for scale, but at the same time not lose the integrity of like the message that we're trying to get across? And I feel like right now we've done a good job up until this point in just creating a library of, okay, we have a daily mobility workout that people can access. And it's literally a new, unique workout every single day of the year.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Yeah. Super, super cool. It's like my programming and Natalie's like programming time is kind of increased a little bit, but it's great because like, you know, it's fresh. Like every single day, if people are showing up to that routine, they're going to see something new, maybe a movement they've done like in the past month or whatnot, but in a different context and in a different light, which provides a completely different experience for people.
Well, and I think too, you know, like as I think about the folks listening, a lot of this stuff, you know, you hear this and you're like, oh my God, this sounds awesome. But then when you're like, all right, I'm going to do movement in the morning. You're kind of like, you're like, what do I start with? Maybe some downward dog. I think, and now I'm trying to stretch. I don't know. So that's awesome to hear. And I think the other thing that I like about that too, that you said is, it's different every day. Like, I think it's important to have like something that you're excited to try and like continue to learn. And, so yeah, I have to imagine that's really appealing to the folks who are using it as well.
100%. And, you know, right now it just has, you know, it has some of our breathwork videos. which obviously we speak to like the breathe light, breathe right.
Oh, very cool.
We have some of that stuff in there. We have the foam rolling aspect. We have, the routines of just like a full follow along of like a 10-minute mobility routine.
Oh, very cool.
Some really cool stuff called titled The Durable Professional, which is basically like a 3 to 5 minute follow along video at a desk, whether it's seated or standing. And it's just there as a way to kind of show people that, like, again, you don't need to go to a gym. You don't need to put your yoga clothes on. Like, you can literally, I literally turn from my desk and I'm like, okay, this is what we're going to do here for 3 minutes and you're going to feel better. Just follow me. We have kind of like a wide variety of content, everything from just like working out to everything to just like feeling better, like just waking up and moving your body in a certain way to just help you feel mentally and physically better. And I think that is going to be the foundation for our app going forward. Is it's not necessarily going to be, titled or advertised as like the best workout app in the world. There's resources on there where there's not just the mobility workout, but there's like a fitness workout of the day. Like, we have that on there as an offering. But I think where people are hopefully going to resonate with us and come to us, for is going to be for, hey, I'm just like, what do I do for the shoulder stuff? What do I do for like my neck? What do I do for my back? How do I just I want my hips to not hurt when I squat? Like, what do I do? Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the market. And like, that's kind of like what we're going to start to speak to a little bit more, which is like,
very cool.
How do I just get to a better baseline to just go do everything else that you want to do?
Yeah, man. Well, and it's like you said too, like everything really is cumulative, right? So whatever the stressors are in your life, like, for me, for whatever reason, like my lower back has been like the thing that like has just nagged me ever since like I played, which was quite a while ago. Right. But it's like, you kind of just like learn to live with that. But like, I'm probably not thinking about all the ways that continual like stress or pain is like bleeding into all these other like little micro aggravations that I like encounter over the course of the day. I think, helping people start to address some of these things and giving them the tools and the resources. Like you said, it doesn't have to be at a gym. It could be breath work. It could be hitting your steps. It could be, sleeping better. And then hopefully like kind of all ships start to rise with the tide as you start to at least make like some addressments at all of these different like pillars so that like, everything kind of starts to like all level up.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
You hit it on the head right there, bro. I love that.
Awesome. Well, dude, this has been amazing. We didn't even get to 9 out of my 10 questions. This was so good though. So definitely, if you're up for it, man, would love to have you back on in the future. Super inspiring, and hopefully people will get a lot out of this one. And like I said, I'm going to point them to the app, the website. They can also follow you on Instagram for all of that as well. So yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much, Ken. Happy New Year to you, man. And obviously Happy New Year to everybody out there that's listening and watching as well.
Yeah, you got it, man. Likewise.